Hello, everyone. This is Lauren Steiner, and welcome to tonight's edition of the Robust Opposition. I'm very pleased to have with me three young college student organizers. They are workers at their respective colleges, and they have organized unions. And as viewers of my show know, I've been covering union organizing, and I want to say that one of the colleges represented here, Wesleyan University, is my alma mater. And I was thinking back to the very first picket line I supported, and that was when I was in college at some point during the second half of the 70s when we went to New Haven to support the secretaries at Yale that were going on strike. So this is kind of like coming back full circle to find out that there is a union being organized at my alma mater. And so I'm going to ask Sam to introduce himself first. I'm going to ask everybody to say their name, their college, what year they're in, what job they have, and the name of their union. So let's start with you, Sam.
Yeah, my name is Sam DosSantos. I'm a freshman at Wesleyan. I got involved with the Wesleyan Union of Student Employees because I'm going to be an RA next year. And so that's my position at Wesleyan.
And just for those who don't know, RA stands for Resident Advisor, and they have jobs in the dorms to help new students adjust. Let's go to you, Amelia.
Hi, I'm Amelia Carnell. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a junior at Kenyon College, where I work as an admissions worker and have been involved with organizing our union, the Kenyon Student Worker Organizing Committee, or KSWOC.
And you, Keir?
Hi, I'm Keir Hichens. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a third-year student at Grinnell College, and I'm a student safety, student security employee, and also a student publications worker. I'm also the president of the Union of Grinnell Student Dining Workers.
Great. Now, we sent out invitations to some other college organizers, Dartmouth, Fordham. There's a lot of colleges that are organizing right now. Maybe we can talk about what you guys know of them at the end. So I'm very thankful that these guys accepted my offer to come on the show. Let's start with my first question being, what were the conditions in your workplace that caused you to want to start a union or join a union? And again, we'll start with you, Sam.
Yeah, so some of this is actually kind of funny. The first notable thing that happened this year, so move-in day was especially chaotic for residential advisors and residential life staff. People were moving people in, asked to do things like manual labor that was not in their job description, things like that. And then kind of to put the icing on the cake, we were kind of in the middle of a minor hurricane. And so what happened was we have three sets of dorms called the Butterfields at our college. And what happened was they all flooded. And so RAs on their first night of the job were being expected to kind of shuttle kids out in the middle of the night with very little notice, no training to adequately handle such a situation. And what ended up happening was RAs kept going back and forth, helping people grab their stuff, helping people go, and everyone was expected to sleep in the gym. And so RAs were, of course, responsible for getting people out of their residence halls and into the athletic center. And they were given no support from the management, no support from the area coordinators, no support from anybody really. And they were kind of just expected to do this on their own. And so what ended up happening was we brought that to the administration, asked for some form of hazard pay, asked for some form of compensation for having to deal with this on such short notice on the first night of students being on campus. And we were met with fuzzy socks. And so that was really the kind of apex of union organizing at Wesleyan. However, there were also kind of other underlying issues. The kind of standard social contract as it is understood for residential life employees is that their compensation will at least kind of cover the housing and room and board aspect of their college experience because of the nature of their job and the nature of what they do. And at Wesleyan, that's actually not the case. Wesleyan residential employees are, so there's this thing called the housing, there's a kind of combination of expenses that Wesleyan students have to pay for room and board. And Wesleyan is a 4-year residential college, so you have to live on campus all 4 years. And as you kind of progress in your education, that residential fee also goes up because of the quality of housing you live in. And of course, that's understandable, except residential life workers are only compensated about 50% of that fee. And so we viewed this as a major issue. And so that's another issue that kind of led to the organization, is that we don't believe that residential life and student workers at all on this campus are fairly compensated.
That's very interesting, because when I was at Wesleyan, I lived off campus in a house next to the bookstore. 55 Broad Street was the address. In fact, I used to answer the phone, 55 Broad Street, which Broad do you want to speak to? I know it sounds kind of sexist now, but anyway. Thought it was funny at the time. I'm old. Boomer here. Anyway, Amelia, how about you talking about your situation? What caused you to want to join or start a union?
Yeah, I actually really like my job. I have a really great relationship with my coworkers and with my immediate supervisor. There's a lot about my job that's really awesome. My supervisor pays us for all our training hours. She finds lots of opportunities for us to like do extra work if, for example, our tours get canceled at the last minute. But I sort of saw in other sort of workplaces across campus that not all students were like getting those things. And a lot of workplaces on my campus have had like really negative changes in recent years. So for those reasons, I wanted to stand with my other student workers. But I think also the things that are great about my job are sort of at the discretion of my boss, which really concerns me because Kenyon has had a lot of administrative turnover recently. And because students like are cycling through every 4 years, and it's just sort of memory that keeps things going. I think it's really important that we get these things in a contract. And then those were sort of my initial reasons, but in the past 2 years that Case Walk has been organizing and that I've been involved, the reaction of the college has just really cemented in my mind the need for a union because since we started organizing, working at Kenyon has gotten worse for a lot of people, which is just not acceptable and just cements in my mind that we need a union.
Now, do you think that any of that has to do with the pandemic? Because that's made life worse for a lot of people in the last 2 years.
I think that is definitely a reason. I also think there's been a lot of, like, for example, they found ways for like me to work remotely. They didn't find ways for a lot of other student workers to work remotely. But I also think like some of the recent changes have really nothing to do with the pandemic. Like for our language teaching assistants, who we call ATs or apprentice teachers, they just instituted this mandatory training class that they have to take to hold the job. That was new as of this year. So they basically have to pay for their job training, which is interesting. Just to then go on and make about $10 an hour.
Wow. Okay, Keir, you want to talk about your situation?
Sure. Yeah. So I wasn't around originally when UGSDW was founded. It was founded in 2016, just in the dining hall. So conditions in the dining hall were very bad, and they continue to be bad to this day. So I can talk a little bit about how things are now. We've fought for higher wages, but the wages are still pretty low. They're $10.40 an hour for dining workers, which is dollars an hour more than every other job on campus, every non-union job on campus. And so understaffing is a huge issue. I think right now, I think my first year, there were about 300 plus student workers who worked in the dining hall. And now there are fewer than 100. and that has left student workers on every shift. You show up for a shift and they move you around to a completely different station. There are students doing the job of 3 or 4 other people on their own without any support, without a supervisor. And so those conditions have been bad and gotten worse. The college has refused to address things. They've refused to raise the wage. We've taken action. We're in the middle of a contract right now. We've offered to reopen that contract and renegotiate the wage so that more people would work. And the college just flat refuses to do so. So we're that's part of it. The other thing that Grinnell has been that we've been organizing around for a long time is to expand the union to cover not just dining workers, but every student worker on campus. So we have been organizing around that since 2017. And actually tomorrow is the big day. They're counting the votes in our NLRB election, the National Labor Relations Board election, to expand to every student workplace on campus. So I think the way that I got involved was just by seeing the tactics that the college used to push back against that expansion effort. They fought it tooth and nail. They hired one of the nation's most expensive and top union busting law firms, Proskauer Rose, that also represents like the National Basketball Association. They hired them to come in and to try to block our right to unionize. They argued that student workers aren't workers, and so we shouldn't have the right to unionize. And 5 years later, we're still here. We're still fighting, and we're poised to win the first win recognition for the first campus-wide undergraduate union in the country. So yeah, those are, and then I guess I can also say I work at student safety. This year it's a similar deal with understaffing, except we get paid less than the dining hall workers. There's no union representation yet until we win this election. And so I currently make $8.24 an hour as a student security worker. I'm supposed to be there so that campus safety, campus police don't have to be at all campus events. But that hasn't worked out because there are only 6 of us when there should be 40 or more. And so we received no training this year. Things are pretty grim. So yeah, all of those different things together, we know that the college can't run without student work. And so it's long past time that our wages and our working conditions reflected that.
Well, that's very exciting. If you could get the first all-campus union representing all the different workers. And I can imagine that in your security position, you know, when there's only 6 of you and there should be 40, that's an issue for your safety as well. I mean, what if something should break out and you don't have enough, you know, people to handle it? That could be a huge liability for the university, putting you in that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think our biggest role is basically just making sure that people get home safe from campus events, and so a lot of that is just like active bystanderism and having the tools to deal with situations. But like I said, this year we received no training when we're supposed to have all kinds of different like CPR training and all kinds of different stuff like that. So it just actually at a recent event there was someone who was passed out after drinking too much. No one knew who this person was, and the cops ended up being called, and so there were armed cops at this school dance because we didn't have the training to adequately deal with the situation, and we had no supervisor to turn to. So yeah, that's one reason of many that we're organizing and that we're about to win our union.
Okay, well, who wants to talk about what happened when you tried to negotiate before you resorted to forming a union, before you realized that, well, no, we need a union? Who wants to talk about how negotiations went with their college? Okay, Sam.
Yeah, I'd be happy to talk about that. Wesleyan really dismissed us for a long time before we kind of advocated as a collective. People went to administrators to kind of establish these complaints about hazard pay specifically, as well as something I forgot to mention was the COVID-19 pandemic was also a very hard time for residential life. We were being expected to kind of enforce these policies without having a say in the policymaking and how practical kind of enforcing those policies would be. And so what ended up happening is we would go to the administration, we'd go like, workers would go to their area coordinators, who are their supervisors, and be written off. They kind of the typical example at Wesleyan here is there was one staff meeting after the Butts flood that resulted in like a little skit of the area coordinators throwing towels onto the workers to in case there was another flood and in case that like and so they would at least be dry. And so we were really never taken seriously as workers, as people who really help make this campus function. One of the reasons that they gave us for not giving hazard pay would be that they would have to give it to everybody, which doesn't seem like a huge problem.
Yeah.
But and so they like before kind of announcing publicly our intention to start a union, um, student workers here, especially residential life student workers, were really not taken seriously, and our kind of issues and fundamental problems with the way the working conditions here were really written off by administration.
Well, it sounds like here, probably your experience with trying to negotiate voluntarily with them wouldn't have worked out, because even when you got a union, they brought in the union busters. Amelia, do you want to speak to what your campus was like if you tried to, or any of your comrades tried to negotiate to try to improve these conditions before starting the union?
Yeah, I mean, I think the hard thing is if you don't have the power of a union, there's no permanency, even if you are able to get like small wins here and there. Like I know K-SWAC really started organizing in spring 2020 when we all got sent home from the COVID pandemic. And student workers were able to come together and get compensation for shifts people missed in that second half of our spring semester when they were at home, even if they couldn't work remotely. But that was just for that one semester. And, you know, all of the 2020, 2021 school year, people were dealing with quarantine. If they like became a close contact, you weren't able to work. And there wasn't that pay, that COVID pay anymore. And I just think like even like some people, like you can like talk to your supervisor and like maybe you can get something or maybe you can't. But I think like it's become clear that the reason we need a union is because we need a contract that lasts longer than a semester or one set of workers or one supervisor, because as I mentioned, we've had a lot of turnover in the past few years.
Now let's talk about the nitty-gritty of organizing. What was the process like? How did you decide if you affiliated with a larger union, which one you were going to affiliate with? Which constituencies did you seek the support of? Talk about what it was like. Let's start with you, Keir.
Sure. Yeah. So, like I said, I wasn't around for the original organizing of the union, but basically we've been organizing in an organizing campaign to expand to every workplace on campus for the last few years. So I've been pretty directly involved with that. I think in terms of constituencies, obviously we're organizing student workers. And I think as both the others mentioned, like our power comes down to like our ability to make change and to force the bosses to give us what we need comes down to our ability to take collective action as workers and take collective action in our workplaces. So we've been pretty laser focused on organizing student workers in their workplaces, making sure that we know people in every single workplace. And we did one-on-ones with as many people as we could. We knocked every door on campus multiple times. And so that was very much our focus of kind of getting people up to speed and then getting people to buy in and to realize that our interests as workers are directly opposed to the college. And the reason that collaborating with the college doesn't work is because their system is set up to bury issues when they're brought up. It's set up so that individuals, when they bring up an issue to their supervisor or they bring up an issue to HR, it's all about the college's liability. And so that means that they bury issues when they're brought up, and we can only really bring about change when we take collective action together. So it's been a long process. There are tens of workplaces at Grinnell and hundreds of workers. We have 740 plus members at this point, which is almost half of the students on campus. But so it's been a long process, but I think the most important one is kind of the very basics of one-on-one conversations with workers, getting people to talk to their coworkers, to have a kind of escalating conversations that lead to escalating actions and that are mapped out in every workplace very specifically. So we know who has the power in each workplace and who has the sway with their coworkers. We target those people, get them to talk to their coworkers until we've built a majority in every workplace on campus. And that's where we're at right now. And that's why we're going to win the election that we're in the process of.
Now, you are not affiliated with a larger union, right? It's an independent union. And what's the name of it again? The
Union of Grinnell Student Dining Workers.
Okay. And when I was asking about constituencies, I was thinking about, did you seek the support of faculty? Did you seek the support of adult workers? Did you seek the support of the town that you're in? Did you do like a public relations campaign?
So we've done a ton of outreach. We make all of our statements public, and we welcome support from professors. But we, like I said, I think we knew at the end of the day, the thing that would win our union was the threat of taking direct action in our workplace. And so we've been pretty focused on that. And but yeah, we do have, there are faculty who are very supportive of us, and we have like signs that they've put up. We've done a bunch of postering campaigns, and we have a pretty robust like website with all of our press releases. We've done outreach to the press in local communities, but for the most part, we've been focused on student workers.
Amelia, would you like to talk about your process there at Kenyon?
Yeah, I mean, I also was not there at the very beginning. I started working in August 2020, and Case-Walk started organizing in the spring. But I think I would echo that the backbone of our organization is conversation with our coworkers. And I think that's been the best part in a way, because I think just like realizing your solidarity and the power you have together as workers is very empowering. And I think just the one-on-one conversations, reaching out to our coworkers, reaching out to our friends, finding our issues and what we can do to make change. We have affiliated with a larger union. We're affiliated with UE. That was a really natural choice because
what does that
we already
stand
have a United Electrical, oh my gosh, I'm embarrassing myself, Radio and Machinists. United Electrical. But it was a really natural choice for us because we already have a UE unit on campus. Our maintenance skilled trades workers are UE 712, and that unit has been an amazing ally for us. They've come out to support us from our earliest pickets, and we've gone to support them at their actions. And it's been really great to have their support and also the validation. One of Kenyon's main arguments is that we're not workers, we're just students, and having the validation of other unionized workers is huge. We've gotten support from professors, from alumni, the broader community. But I think it does ultimately come down to worker power, and that comes from those one-on-one conversations and then larger conversations together as workers.
Well, I think that's how I found out about the Wesleyan Union. It was in a Wesleyan progressive alumni Facebook group that I'm a member of. And that's how I reached out to whoever I reached out to see if I could get you on my show. So, Sam, talk about what it's been like at Wesleyan. You have the distinction of being the first voluntarily recognized union, which means the university didn't put up a fight, which I find very interesting. After you answer, I'm going to tell you my little story with Michael Roth, who's the president of the university. But talk about your process, such that I know maybe it happened before you started because you're just a freshman, but what do you know of it?
Yeah, so I was not here kind of when the idea for this union came about, but I was fortunate enough to work kind of very hard on the campaigning of this year, the behind the scenes stuff, kind of the pre-going public We reached out to a lot. It started as kind of a little idea, um, with some labor advocates and some Res Life student employees, just getting together and saying, we need to make a change. We need to make something better about this workplace. And so this past year, we've been doing so much work behind the scenes, kind of mapping out workplaces, getting in contact with our student workers. And I would like to echo the sentiment that the others have been talking about, in that our student workers, especially our Res Life workers, kind of because that's who we've been working with so far, are really the backbone of this. The people who we've reached out to have been overwhelmingly supportive. Um, and Wesleyan, as a fairly progressive campus, we've been fortunate to also receive kind of a ton of support from the student body. We've held rallies with lots of people there, lots of support. Um, we've been fortunate to have alumni, either from the Connecticut State Legislature. The mayor of Middletown is a Wesleyan alumni who came to speak at our rally. Um, Alumni outreach has been really impactful, in our support. And yeah, our campaign was incredibly strong. Um, and that's mostly why we were able to win that voluntary recognition, because we were able to kind of consolidate that power and that backbone with our student workers. And our student workers have really bought into this idea. And so I think that was the most important part of the process, like the others have been saying, is kind of making sure that this collective is a collective and not just a bunch of individuals who have the same job.
Yeah, my little story about Michael Roth, who's the president, and I bet you I have the distinction of being the only alum who's blocked on Twitter by the president of my college, because in 2014, I was taking my younger son around to look at colleges and went to an event at the 92 Theater where I saw Michael Roth, and I decided to use that opportunity to pitch him on divestment, because I've been an anti-fracking activist. And I remember him saying, oh, well, no college is doing that. Even Bill McKibben couldn't get, Middlebury to do it. And I said, well, Hampshire has. And he goes, oh, Hampshire, with the eye roll. And I said, well, you couldn't blame me for trying. And he said, well, yes, I can, but you were going to do it anyway. And I just thought that was so fucking rude to say to an alumni that I haven't given them a dime since then. But I keep saying, anytime I get a solicitation, when you guys decide to divest, even after the UC system divested from fossil fuels and said that this was an economic decision because we didn't want to have any stranded assets in our portfolio. It wasn't even a moral decision. It was an economic decision. Even then, he refused to do it. And I had talked to a trustee, a very important trustee in Los Angeles, who said it wouldn't even be an issue for their portfolio if they did it. So as far as I know, they still haven't done it. Do you know, Sam?
Yeah, so there's a campaign that has, again, largely been forefronted by students, to get Wesleyan carbon neutral by, I believe it was 2050, and they tried to push it up to 2035. But it's a very slow process. There's a lot of construction and there's a lot of issues with the labor being used for that construction, but that is a kind of separate issue. Um, I'm not super familiar with that, but I know there are efforts, but they're progressing slowly.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, well, so my next question is about you started to talk about the pushback and bringing in these union busters. And we know from listening to, the workers at Amazon and the workers at Starbucks that they had all these anti-union meetings. Did they have those kind of meetings, or is it a little bit different at a university where they actually require you to come in and they talk to you about how you're partners and we don't really need a union because we all take care of each other, et cetera, et cetera? Were any of you subjected to that?
Our campaign was a little unique in that we kind of ambushed them a little bit. I don't think they were ready for the magnitude or speed at which we were capable of working, and kind of the amount of union cards we had already collected. And so, like you had already mentioned, we are the first voluntarily recognized undergraduate union in the country, and so the hostility came less so with um, with kind of union busting meetings or anything like that, and more of just an unwillingness to talk about anything. Like um, supervisors, administration were very unwilling to discuss anything with us before kind of signing the voluntary recognition agreement. Um, Area coordinators didn't meet with their staff to address questions. They were very much, I think, afraid of anything they could say. And so the hostility came in just a lack of communication between the administration, the supervisors, and its workers. It wasn't as much as kind of direct union busting as it was just um, omission of information.
Now, I know, Keir, you said your vote is tomorrow, but for the other guys who've had votes, was it unanimous, or were there any people that didn't want to join a union or start a union? And if so, what were their reasons? So do you know, I mean, I guess I'm asking Sam and Amelia because you've had votes. Do you know if there were any no votes?
We have not had a vote. We're still fighting to get an election.
Oh, I see. So Sam, you were the only one who's had the vote so far.
We actually didn't have a vote. What we did was we entered into an agreement for voluntary recognition, which was done through a card check, which means if we had over 50% of people who signed union cards, then our union would be voluntarily recognized by the university. And so what ended up happening was there were 84% of people who signed union cards. My personal hypothesis is that there would have been more had we've been able to get in contact with some people. I know for a fact that someone I know personally who didn't sign a union card was just kind of not able to be reached for a long time, kind of as we were kind of in the process of collecting those union cards. So I think there was an overwhelming kind of amount of support for this union on the side of the student workers. And that was something that management knew as well. Um, so yeah, we had, like I said, we had 84% of our bargaining unit sign union cards.
Well, I guess a better way to phrase that question is, if there hasn't been a vote, has there been any resistance on the part of any students, even if you haven't had a vote yet? Has anybody given you an argument why they don't think there should be a union or why they don't want to join it?
There was initially some confusion. I wouldn't say kind of opposition or resistance, but there was some confusion on behalf of some of the student workers, and there was a letter expressing that to us. And we were able to kind of communicate efficiently with them. And I wouldn't call it opposition. I think there were people who were less involved in this effort, people who didn't fully understand what a union meant. And so I think that was kind of the most like resistance we encountered, was just people not fully understanding what their role could be, what kind of we were doing. And so I think that was pretty easily resolved with some communication and some outreach from us.
Do either of the other of you have a comment on that? Resistance or opposition?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think, like, echoing what Sam said, I think that just because of the declines of unions in this country, like, a lot of people just don't have like a parent who's a unionized worker or have that like point of reference to even understand what a union is. I also think like undergraduate unionizing is new, and a lot of people don't really see how it like fits in to like their work experience. But I think like what's been important for us as we've been organizing is bringing in, even when people disagree with us, bringing them in and finding out like, because everyone will be a part of our union when we're recognized. So bringing them in and finding how like we can all like work together to make this union what's best for all of us. I think like there are people who like don't see, I think a lot of people who have maybe a job they really like just don't see if the union could like improve their job. But I think a lot of those people still feel solidarity with other student workers who they've seen have had negative experiences. So I would echo Sam that we're like sort of working through like just like defining what a union is and what our union will be for us.
Keir, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think the most intense opposition we've faced has been from the college. And from the very beginning, like we didn't have any captive audience meetings, but the college used its platform early on, sent all campus memos almost every week, some of which threatened to not let our organizers graduate, threatened student workers who were engaged in concerted activity together, so threaten them with conduct processes over alleged intimidation and harassment for holding pickets and demonstrations. So I think we've had to fight much harder against that than against other student workers, because student workers understand that they need an avenue to fight for higher wages and better working conditions, and that the college is incapable of doing that on its own. So yeah, I think we've fought very hard, but I think like we're looking forward to our election results and hoping that they'll be close to unanimous, if not unanimous, because we know that the sentiment on campus is very positive in favor of the union. We've just had to fight the administration that has been using every tool in its at its disposal to try to block our unionizing.
Well, that's terrible. That's really terrible. I'm going to tell all my friends with college-age students not to send their kids to that college. I don't want.
Well, you could also tell them that there's some pretty cool organizing going on here, and that I think the thing is that Grinnell's not special. Grinnell just it's particularly obvious because Grinnell sells itself as this social justice institution, and in a similar way to Kenyon and to Wesleyan, and so it's a lot of it is just holding up their actions against their words and pointing out the way that they say one thing and to get people to commit to go to the school and then turn around and do something else. I think fundamentally they run the school like a business, and it's run like in a very similar fashion to other schools around the country. So obviously it's a problem that's much bigger than just one school or one administration, but it's kind of the nature of higher education in America.
Yeah, well, I mean, just of the three of you, your situation seems like the most egregious. But, you know, what you're speaking about, the political education is so important. And it's one of the reasons that the Amazon workers say they were able to get a union in Staten Island versus one in Alabama, because New York is a union town. And so many of the workers had parents or relatives or friends who were in a union and understood the benefits of the union. And also the one-on-one conversations. You know, Chris Smalls was able to have those. Well, not so much him, because he was fired and he had to do his at the bus stop. But Derek Palmer and the others, they were inside the plant and they were able to have one-on-one conversations. Whereas in Bessemer, they had these outside union organizers that couldn't get in, and they moved a stoplight so that they couldn't even approach them when they were stopped at the light outside the plant. Amazon did that. And they were able to paint them as outside agitators. So it's really interesting to follow this process. So when the vote is won, I know with you, Sam, you didn't have to win anything because they accepted you. But, you know, the next step is, you know, you win the vote, you have a union, then you've got to negotiate a bargaining agreement with them. And that's another place that they can obstruct. They could try to challenge the vote. They could take, you know, their time, wear you out, assume that the organizers are going to graduate and they're going to lose, you know, interest. What are your next steps after you presumably win these unions? Let's start with you, Keir.
Yeah, I'll just quickly add that we outlasted Grinnell's efforts to shut us down, and we got to a place where they actually signed a neutrality and election agreement to agree to let our election go forward. So as of like right now, I think Kenyon's administration is very much the most opposed and most actively opposed. They're delaying. They've been delaying the hearing to set up an election for months. And our hired Jones Day, this similar union busting law firm. So I think we've managed to outlast, and hopefully Kenyon's administration is paying attention to all of the other schools around the country with unions and saying, hey, look, this is just a matter of time that they're going to win no matter what we do. And their organizers may graduate, but there will be new organizers to replace them. So I think, and we're very excited about like working together and kind of collaborating on that across higher ed. We've been just getting connected in the past couple of months, so I know we're all excited about the potential there. So but like for the collective bargaining agreement, I think we've successfully negotiated either 4 or 5, I can't remember, bargaining agreements for our dining workers. That's a process that the college again uses all of the tools in its at its disposal to block and to try to block raising wages, block all of the things that student workers need. So we do have to fight, and I think just like in the lead up to an election, the most powerful thing that we have at our disposal is not just the ability to sit down at the bargaining table, it's the threat of going on strike if they don't give us what we need. And so I think that the two have to happen in tandem, where we're negotiating over an agreement, and student workers are giving input on that. We'll build a bargaining team to do that once we win our election. But at the same time, we are also organizing each other and talking to our coworkers so that we're ready to take action when the college inevitably does not give us what we need. So I think, that's those two things at the same time have to go hand in hand, because the legal process, it is set up. I think more often than not, it's set up to actually curtail the power that we have, and so we have to make sure that we're also doing the organizing and building our collective power at the same time.
Well, one good thing about the Biden administration is he did put in good appointees into the National Labor Relations Board, and they've been helping out a lot of these union efforts, like the workers that they fired, the entire Memphis organizing team, Starbucks fired, and they said that was illegal and they have to reinstate them. What are your next steps, Amelia?
Yeah. So we are on strike right now. Not our whole unit, but I think in 5 workplaces right now are on strike, and the strike will grow. We've been on strike for more than 2 weeks now, which does make this the longest undergraduate labor strike in history, which is not a milestone we wanted to achieve, but is where we're at. Kenyon has been fighting our union sort of pretty harshly for 2 years. We're on strike right now over unfair labor practices. Kenyon, since we started organizing, has decided that community advisors who serve a similar role to RAs at other schools are not employees. They're student leaders who happen to receive a stipend, which is really, really concerning, because if you're not an employee, they don't need to pay you minimum wage. They don't need to pay you overtime. You're not protected by OSHA. And you also wouldn't be included in a bargaining unit. And that's just sort of one of the retaliations we've seen since we've started organizing. They also this year eliminated a residential position at our student farm. I mentioned they added that mandatory training class for our language teaching assistants. And we did.
I'm sorry. What are the 5 groups that are on strike? I'm trying to see what's not functioning at your university right now.
Yes. Currently our library workers, including Helpline, which is our tech support, so none of the printers are functioning. Our language teaching assistants, our community advisors, our student farmers, and the writing center, which is sort of a tutoring center.
Now, what do they do when students go on strike? Do they try, is it like where they get scabs and other,
well, apparently the college is operating as normal. But as someone who tried to print something today, I don't think it is. The Kenyon strategy has just sort of been to like pretend it's not happening, sort of this whole time. And like, it just leaves students in a tough place. Like right now, I don't have a community advisor, and the circulation desk at the library is only open certain hours. The writing center is only open certain hours. And actually we did sort of a really exciting recent development from us is we did about a week and a half into a strike last Wednesday, the National Labor Relations Board, we got a letter setting our hearing date for May 5th, which is really exciting. They also dismissed the college's legal arguments about FERPA. One of Kenyon's main arguments is that we couldn't have a union because it would violate FERPA, which is like the Education Privacy Protection Act, which is odd because there are other undergraduate unions and also graduate unions, and graduate students are protected by FERPA. But the NLRB dismissed that, thankfully. And we're still on strike right now over those unfair labor practices that have not been addressed. We're also fighting right now for a stipulated election agreement. We would like to vote this spring with our current seniors who have been fighting for more than half of their time at Kenyon to get a union. And Kenyon could still sign a stipulated election agreement at any time. So we're fighting for that, but we do have that hearing on May 5th, which is really exciting, and I think has energized us a lot and has shown that the college's legal arguments aren't right. We do also have our own set of very expensive union busting lawyers.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that. How do you get, because you're students, right? And you're only making, like you're saying, $10 an hour at most. How can you afford lawyers, or do you get them pro bono?
Yeah, so we've gotten, luckily through our affiliation with the National UE, we've been able to get a staffer and also legal representation, which has been really great. I will also just plug for 1 second, we are on strike. Striking is really expensive. We have a GoFundMe as our strike fund. Just putting that out there.
Well, I'm going to ask you to put that in the comments of the show.
Oh, I would love to.
StreamYard, but definitely go onto my page and put that GoFundMe there, as well as links so people can follow you on Twitter and any other information that you want to provide to the viewers. So now what's coming around is, graduation is coming around, summer is coming around. This is something that other workers don't have to deal with. What happens after your main organizers graduate? Do some of them stay involved just because they're so committed and so invested? What happens during the summer? Are people still working on this issue even though they're on summer break and maybe doing an internship or have some other job? Whoever wants to answer that.
Yeah, I know at Wesleyan, our bargaining sessions have just begun. And so that's a big thing here is the ongoing bargaining process, and that is actually going to take place through the summer. As a member of the bargaining committee, I will be kind of on Zoom meetings with the administration, with my team, with kind of our legal representation, with our kind of union affiliated people, like probably through most of the summer. And kind of our network of alumni has been incredibly supportive. Obviously, you as one of them having us here. We've been fortunate enough to have a lot of outreach. Not only like we have an alumni who works for Wesleyan in the Career Center office, Brian Chong, who probably set this up. He works really hard with kind of our student labor efforts. And so there's a combination. We definitely have a strong group of people who are still going to be here. I think Keir said something about this, that there will always be new organizers to take the place of the old ones. But also people at Wesleyan have stayed involved. People care a lot. And people are still very involved in the day-to-day functionings of this campus. And we are fortunate enough to have that support system of people who are willing to kind of help us with that.
Do either of you want to address that subject? What happens during the summer and after graduation? Amelia?
Yeah, I mean, Kenyon tried to outlast us once when we lost a lot of our original leaders when they graduated in 2021, and we're still here. There are always new leaders. It's really inspiring to see like first years and sophomores joining the campaign. Over the summer, I mean, I'm working for Kenyon over the summer, so there are still students working. I know that this summer break jobs work a little bit differently, just because it's not during the school year. And we haven't spent as much time thinking about that, but that's something definitely we're going to do this summer. There's a lot of inequities in sort of like some summer break jobs, you get free housing, some you don't, some you get like to be on the, you get like free meals in the dining hall, some you get like a pretty limited stipend for meals. So looking at some of those issues, but I think that, yeah, we'll keep going. Like, Kenyon's strategy has definitely been to wait us out through graduation. And I think we've repeatedly shown them that doesn't work. But also we're fighting really hard right now because we will keep going next year, but also our seniors have devoted more than 2 years of their Kenyon time to this, and they should get to vote in our union election.
Well, it's quite an education, I would say. I had a viewer here who wanted to know if this experience is directing you towards a career specializing in unionization. Anyone?
Absolutely. My mother is an employment lawyer for management, and so it's funny to kind of have realized, having grown up in that, and then kind of the juxtaposition of working in the union field. I've definitely been kind of reevaluating a lot of kind of my future ideas. No commitments, obviously. I'm a freshman, but I think labor law has been something that has now piqued my interest.
Well, I have a labor lawyer watching right now, my friend Buddy Gottlieb from Los Angeles, and he makes this comment. So let me ask you, Keir, can you speak? You were talking about how the other colleges are organizing and you're starting to talk to them. Talk about the breadth of this movement across campuses. Can you just list some of the campuses that you've spoken to, who's organizing, at what stages, et cetera?
Yeah, so obviously the three of us here, Grinnell, Wesleyan, and Kenyon, we also are in contact with the organizers at Dartmouth and at Hamilton in particular. I think those are the five that have are in the later stages of organizing. But we're also in contact with or is it tens of other institutions that are either in the exploratory phases or are starting to organize. So I think this is something that's just growing, and for some perspective as well. When I got involved with UGSDW, we were the only undergraduates that were organizing at that point, that were currently organizing, and then Kenyon folks joined us, and as of the past 2 months, Wesleyan won their union, Dartmouth won their union, and Hamilton in the fall they won their union. So we're very excited about the potential that this has, and our contacts. I know I speak for all of us when I say our contacts are always open. We're always trying to get more people engaged, and we're more than happy to meet with you and talk about anything and everything, whether that's affiliation or going independent, how to have a one-on-one conversation, what mapping a workplace looks like, where to go for legal help. And I'll echo what Sam said. I think I'm definitely considering obviously continuing union organizing. I think it's one of the most important things that we can be doing as workers. And I've also had like a crash course in labor law in the past little while, as like one of the main negotiators in our neutrality and election agreement. We were consulting with a few different lawyers pro bono and could not have done it without their help, but we had no legal representation. So in the meetings with the college, when it came to negotiating the language itself, we were there doing it on our own. So we've definitely had to learn a lot, but it is rewarding, and I also think that it's like the benefits are we're yet to see the extent to which unions of student workers can win, and I think this is just the beginning. So we're excited to be a part of this growing wave, and excited to provide resources to anyone out there who might want them.
Well, I want to say that I'm very encouraged by it because I was involved 10 years ago with the Occupy movement. And aside from changing the national conversation, we didn't achieve that much, although that in and of itself is a lot. And I think it made possible the Bernie Sanders candidacy, which I was also involved with. And, he was sabotaged by the Democratic Party twice. And yet you saw him yesterday speaking first to the Amazon workers during the day and then to the Starbucks workers at night. He's really very supportive of this. I'm wondering how many of you, because you're of that age, were influenced by Bernie Sanders or the group that sort of got a real boost after his campaign, the Democratic Socialists of America. Anybody?
I mean, I can say that I think Bernie Sanders was kind of the way that I first started thinking about progressive politics. And my politics have progressed, so to speak, since then. But I definitely, that was kind of how I started thinking about a lot of this stuff. And I think in terms of, but it's also, I think it's important to kind of maybe separate organizing and like national electoral politics, because sometimes they overlap, but more I think more frequently the kind of the basics of organizing I learned by being taught them by other student workers at Grinnell, and really having to go and have organizing conversations with my coworkers about the union, about our specific demands, and that was something that I never could have learned from electoral politics. But I think certainly that had an impact on me personally and some of my fellow organizers. But yeah, I think this is it's one part of a much bigger kind of transformation.
Yeah, I asked that question because there was the New York Times article about the Starbucks workers, and many of them said they were influenced by his campaign. Well, we've just about run out of time, so now I would like to give you an opportunity to speak to the viewers and tell them where they can find you. And of course, you can put this in the comments afterwards. And if there's any one thing that you would like them to do to help you. Start with you, Sam.
Yeah. So I run the Twitter for our union. It's Wes_USE. And so I think that is a good way to kind of get in touch with us, get in touch with kind of the team behind us, or kind of reaching out through most social medias. We've been fortunate enough to talk to a lot of colleges and things like that through social media. Um, I think, yeah, so we're kind of working on building solidarity for our campaign, building solidarity for our workers as we bargain to better our conditions. And so really what we need from viewers and supportive labor advocates is just that advocacy, that kind of show of support and solidarity for us as we kind of work with this administration to provide better working conditions for our student workers.
Was that Wes_USE?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just putting that in the comments right now. Okay, Amelia, your turn.
Yeah, we have a website, kswoc.org, KSWOC. We're also on Twitter at kswoc. We're on Instagram, I believe, also at kswoc. And then the single most important thing that you can do right now is our strike fund GoFundMe. It's linked on our website. I can put it in the comments in a second. But that is really very important. But also just resharing our tweets, talking about it, talking about organizing. I think that like this really is a movement. I think like not just within undergraduate organizing, but the like Starbucks, Amazon. I think it's a resurgence of labor, which is really exciting, just as someone who's going out into the workforce soon.
Okay, Keir, you get the final word.
Yeah, we also are at UGSDW on social media. UGSDW.org is our website. If you're interested in our history, we have all of our press releases going all the way back to 2016 on there, and also our most up-to-date stuff about what the current situation at the college, our election. We'll have our election results up there tomorrow, which is very exciting. And yeah, we're run by optional dues and donations. So we have a donate link on our website. But right now, I would definitely say that donating to Kenyon's strike fund, to Case-Walk's strike fund, is the most important thing that you can do, because we're all of our success is dependent on one another, I think, and so yeah, we're very much in solidarity with Kenyon, and their ability to stay on strike depends on that strike fund. So yeah, go donate to them.
I would also echo that. Go donate to Kenyon.
Yeah, I will be following with bated breath tomorrow the results, and we'll be tweeting them out. So viewers, thank you very much for watching tonight. If you haven't ever watched my show before, excuse me, I've been doing it for 5.5 years. It's called The Robust Opposition because I interview activists, organizers, independent journalists, progressive candidates, progressive legislators, to try to highlight their work and inspire others to get similarly involved. I'm in the midst of a series with local candidates here in Asheville, where I moved last year. So my next show tomorrow night is going to be with Maggie Ellman, who is running for Asheville City Council. Thursday, I'm going to be interviewing Courtney Booth, who's a progressive public defender running for district attorney here in Buncombe County. And then I hope to be doing more shows on labor. An issue that's always interested me, and I've been wanting to do a show for many years now, is about adjunct faculty, because they get paid so little. I think I remember the figure being $2,500 for one entire course. And so many of them are, reduced to either sleeping in their cars. And I even read about female adjuncts kind of resorting to sex work. And there was a Twitter post a couple of weeks ago about a UCLA adjunct that was not even being compensated, and that was so embarrassing to the university that they said, oh, no, we're going to pay her. So I think workers are being exploited, up and down. It's not just people that sort of do manual labor anymore. It's even gotten into the professional classes. You guys probably know that the number of tenure track professors have been reduced, and there's just no job security. My son's working minimum wage, and they don't give him the same. They don't give him, even 30 hours a week, much less 40 hours a week. They don't give him his schedule until 2 days before, so we can't even, get a second job. And then if they're not busy, they let him off early and don't pay him. So this is the precariat class that we're talking about here. And I really do think that we can't depend on politicians to save us. We can only depend on us. So go, you guys. And I'm going to end my show the way I always end it, which is keep fighting, and see you next time. Please share this show. Good night.